In a shady alley, ghostly voices break the silence of the night. "Immaculate lady," comes laughter. "Pure, like an angel. Do you think that when he plays with her, they'll give us a chance? I wouldn't expect any mercy from her. Considering who this girl is, I have no doubt that a difficult fate awaits her." My ears are filled with this wild nonsense, as if I were in a reality where the worst fantasies of the 60s reign. Horror films are taking a break, and rude people still talk about me. Oh my God, it gave me goosebumps and took my breath away. I can barely stand on my feet, from fear and inept handling of heels. The shooting still resonates in my memory. I'm a prisoner. My evening was spent at a charity event, and then I was kidnapped. Torn from safety, I plunged into the unknown. Her hands are tied and her eyes are blindfolded with a black cloth. I could have died from lack of air. And now death from a bullet will be like a gift. The inner critic winks ironically. My heart could fail at any moment. Burn all your bridges behind you. Cannot withstand the pressure of circumstances. What's going on here? Who needs me? After all, I didn't do anything wrong. Not guilty of anything. And my release is not important to anyone. I frantically study the walls around me. Salvation is on the horizon, but my mind is blocked. At critical moments, I always freeze, unable to act. I got along with old grandpa's drunken friends, I learned that. But becoming a victim of kidnapping is new to me. What should I do? What to do now? Meanwhile, the villains continue to indulge their fantasies about me. They discuss my fate with pleasure, indulging in their vulgar thoughts. They are moving forward. My heart skips a beat. Looking at these monsters, I take a small step back. Another. I pray they don't turn around. Give me a minute. I'll be a fugitive and let them continue to dream. She got tangled in the folds of her evening dress. The fabric presses on the body. It is uncomfortable and offensive. But I don't give up. I'm avoiding. I haven't seen meat with the other breast yet. I was immediately grabbed and forced to stutter. "Where are you trying to sneak away, baby? Hello?" The scolder whistles sharply and loudly, attracting the attention of my captors to us. "You risk losing your girlfriend. They have the right to deal with you for this. Come on, go away, young dreamer. Your place is here." But the shadow of hope still shines again and again, because each story captures you in its pitchforks. Each contains a hidden motive of true courage. Luna is confused and tries to understand what is happening. God. The word arsonist echoes in her head. This is Lucas, known in certain circles as a short guy. Lucas's men decided to set a trap for her due to the recent fire, which turned out to be her act of protest. Luna did not act out of ill will. She protected her friend from Lucas, who treated her worse than a thing. The fire was just a distraction. Now it seemed that it would suffer the same fate as the old building. The flame of revenge burns in the hearts of those whom she has offended, and no amount of entreaty will persuade them to show mercy. It will be eaten without further ado. Luna is unceremoniously pushed into a darkened room. As soon as the light turns on, she realizes that there is a path to freedom, a huge window opposite. If she had been alone, she would have jumped at the chance to escape without hesitation. However, men are already filling the space, catching her gaze. They won't even let you touch the window handle, and her hands are still bound with black nylon handcuffs. "Don't worry," one of them commands dully. For some reason, it seems to Luna that she has already seen him somewhere. If you start resisting, it will only get worse. Worse than dying quietly in a corner? She wants to live with all her soul. She had just come up with a plan for a new life, away from the toxic home where she was destined to start over. She had so many ideas and dreams. Leaning against the wall, Luna's knees give way. The ground disappears from under her feet. Fear pulsates through her veins. She shrinks as soon as the door opens again. An inner voice whispers that it's time to prepare for the worst. And it's not Lucas who appears at the door. This is someone much worse. Someone whose appearance heralds the approach of a real storm. The moon trembles with fear, but a spark of struggle flares up in her eyes. After all, in every story there is a gap for light, and every rustle can become a sign of change. She understands that salvation is the only priority. But her legs feel tinny, and she cannot command them to move, standing petrified. Her gaze is turned to the door, where the imposing figure of a man now stands. Like a mountain, he solemnly enters a space that makes even his formidable minions look modest. Next to him, Luna feels like an almost invisible mosquito. The man's white shirt is about to stretch from tense muscles, and bright black tattoos peek through the fabric, like symbols of his unspoken power. A wave of threat and strength emanates from him. His presence seemed to pin her to the wall, and the deep look of his dark eyes was like a final verdict. This is Sergei Volkov, also known in some circles as Groza, and for Luna, he becomes the embodiment of true anxiety, much more terrible than any Lucas or any other member of the lads. Thus, the adversities of fate were predetermined, their problematic intertwinings, meetings that should not have happened, and one little secret that the moon did not want to reveal. Inadvertently, she was the one who put Volkov at a disadvantage. Now he had found her, and was ready to show the seriousness of his intentions. The man's smile seems to foreshadow torture, and his inquisitive gaze literally burns her from the inside. The moon experiences a terrible desire to hide, to become invisible. "Thunderstorm," interrupts the voice of one of the robbers. "There was a problem, one girl was kidnapped. But we'll leave this clarification for later." Volkov quietly interrupts him. "And don't wait too long. Disappear." "But how?" "I will repeat." His cold command and already dead voice were enough to make everyone around him crumble like sand. Even the moon finds it difficult to breathe under the invisible weight of his power. He slowly approaches her, as if enjoying her fear. Now she is a captured animal, and he is a predator, feigning serenity until the hunt begins. No, she can't afford to become a victim. I can't be alone with Groza. Having made a decision, Luna leaves. Her heels are unsteady, and she almost falls, but she still rushes to the window. She pulls the handle above her, and a rush of fresh air instantly fills her lungs. But the next moment, her jerk is interrupted. Thunderstorm pulls her back, pressing her against the wall with its warmth. His teeth are bared in a warning grin, as if telling her not to bother him. However, Luna does not give up. She tries to push him, to create distance between them, but every time she touches his hot skin, she feels an electric shock. Groza deftly grabs her arms, causing the plastic zippers to cut into her skin, raises wrists above head, eliminating the possibility of resistance or escape. Luna simply moans as he presses her body closer to his. "Please let me go," she squeezes out in a hoarse voice, squinting in fear. "Why did you take me? It's not my fault. I don't even know. Please." "You owe me, girl," he whispers, his lips lightly touching her cheek and his fingers sliding along her neck. Under his touch, Luna feels her heartbeat. Now it's time to pay. Her body trembled with fear. Every nerve was tense to the limit. The thunderstorm was so close that it became difficult to even breathe. The air seemed thick and impenetrable. Luna remembered the debt the man was talking about. A few days ago, she borrowed a lighter from him, saving her friend from a terrible disaster. The only way out in this situation was a fire. She did the job well, but the lighter remained in that very restaurant. Just the thought of it made her body tremble even more. After all, Groza didn't even realize that she had left her personal item in place, a scar on his reputation. Was she nervous in any way? Is it worth clarifying? She was in complete panic. "I returned your lighter." The spoon slides across her lip as she tries to escape. "Your personal friend who was with you then." It was only later that she realized how hopeless it sounded. Perhaps no one was with him that day. But Groza's gaze slows. He narrows his eyes and tilts his head, as if tasting her spoon. She's still in the game. There's a chance to get out. "You know, I warned you what would happen if you didn't return him on time." The moon becomes icy from these words. The punishment could be severe, and the man's anger knew no bounds. "Do you need more lighters? Maybe you can order in bulk?" She blurts out, not thinking about the consequences. Damn courage. His response is so harsh that she almost faints from shock and fear. This is where the story ends, about pushing the outcome to the brink of uncertainty. The Groza is approaching the moon, his hands moving with a threat. A familiar feeling of fear flares up in Luna's heart. Words don't come out. It seems to her that even her breathing has stopped in her chest. She knows that she did not allow anything to happen that could cost her so much. "I returned your lighter," she mutters desperately, making up a story as she goes. "If your person did not receive it, then the problem is in your connection. Every second is an eternity for the moon. Every touch binds her even more tightly." He doesn't stop. He goes forward, hoping to establish his own rules of the game. Suddenly, a rude voice is heard, and it seems to Luna that salvation has come. Despite her anxiety, she hears two men arguing. "The girl is under protection," a voice shouts from behind Thunderstorm, as if calling him to stop. Luna listens, and her surprise knows no bounds. A feverish thought came. A mask forgotten in the car, and now confused identities. Luck of fate, or its curse. Depressed and confused, she waits to see what will happen next. Perhaps it is this confusion that gives her a chance to escape. Time played in her favor. The voice fades, leaving only the harsh sounds of Storm's breathing, filling the room with tense silence. And suddenly a sudden movement. Thunderstorm quickly moves towards her, stabilizing the moon on her feet. His fingers are on her face, breaking the space and silence. "What is your name?" There is ambiguity in Thunderstorm's voice, as if the scales of fate are tilting one way or the other. The world begins to float before the eyes of the moon. Fear clouds her consciousness. One thought flashes through his head. Will he touch her if he thinks that she is connected with Violent? Luna thought that he might decide that she was the woman of his enemy, whom he did not want to touch. However, she suddenly realizes that the stakes may be different. Perhaps he will consider her a threat that must be eliminated. Duality arises in the moon's heart. Should I lie to her or tell her the truth? What can protect her life in this dangerous chess game? "We need an answer quickly." His voice is harsh and unapologetic. She whispered the name, hoping that her intuition would not deceive her, and that her choice would be correct. A heavy silence enveloped the room, and the stuffy air conveyed a subtle threat. Luna felt like the storm was pulling her toward him, dooming her to intimacy, which she desperately wanted to get rid of. She could barely stand on her feet, and Thunderstorm held her firmly. "What is your name?" His voice sounds like a sword drawn from its sheath, and every word strikes her consciousness. The world floats before Luna's eyes, and for a moment, she thinks that she is not touching the girl he considers Thunderstorm's ally. But this might not be the case, and a new fear appears in her head. What if Storm decided to destroy the enemy, starting with his girlfriend? Luna knew she had few options: tell the truth or a cleverly crafted lie that could save her from imminent danger. "Come on, answer," Storm insists, and his unwavering tone sends shivers down her spine. Luna gathers all her courage and speaks a barely audible name, praying that her decision will be the key to salvation. Her heart is ready to burst out of her chest, and she is waiting for a reaction, like fate, which may yet turn into an unpredictable path. Luna's eyes are filled with fear and confusion as she whispers the name. The Storm freezes for a moment. His lips straighten into a line. At this critical moment, determining the possibility of her flight or punishment, a name sounds that she was sure would push his heavy hand away from her. Zlata," she exhales barely audibly. And at this moment, the moon understands that the bonds of fate lead her along the thin ice of lies and truth. Storm studied her face, trying to find at least a few centimeters in her features that would help him distinguish fact from fiction. It was as if an impenetrable glass appeared in his eyes. He decides to believe or not these simple words. "Zlata," he repeated, and Luna noticed a subtle light of doubt that gave her hope. Groza ordered his people to check the history of the moon. Plans, escape, and rescue scenarios began to appear in her head. If she can convince them that she is wrong, perhaps she will gain freedom. While his men left, she and Storm were left alone, and in the lull of this unequal confrontation, a tense atmosphere hung in the room. Luna felt his gaze slide over her face. She was truly surprised that Luna did not live up to the image of the rebel that he had painted in his imagination. Suddenly, the situation between them began to change mysteriously. "Let's talk," said Storm, momentarily putting aside the invisible noose of fate hanging over the moon. Luna's heart was pounding like the soul of a small captive bird, fighting for every breath. She spoke in a hoarse, barely audible voice, waiting for the moment when the ropes of fate would either tighten completely or unwind, granting her freedom. With every word, with every moment that Storm listened to her, the story took on new forms. And here, where a storm of feelings and misunderstanding could lead to unpredictable consequences, a spark of an unforeseen connection began to emerge between the persecutor and the victim. On the verge between personal convictions and a forced alliance, between fear and possible protection, a light was lit between them that could lead either to death or to salvation. And in this languid expectation, when every second dragged on endlessly, The moon realized that even in the terrible eyes of the storm, one could see the reflection of humanity. And he, in turn, began to understand that in front of him was not a soulless pawn in a game, but a living, breathing creature with his own fears and hopes. What began as a nightmarish episode in her life took a turn, and in the chaos of events, they both approached something impossible, an unexpected conversation of souls that could change their future. In the tactile silence of the room, Luna found the strength to meet Storm's gaze, and the words seemed to float in the air, like heavy clouds on the verge of a downpour. She spoke, and he listened, both feeling the tension building between them, bringing them closer to an unpredictable point of mutual understanding. When his people returned to the room, they found a mask in their hands, the same one that led to confusion with Zlata. But along with her, they also brought news about Lucas, who was already looking for the missing woman, gathering his people for a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Storm turned to Luna, and in his eyes there was now not only suspicion, but also a strange respect. "You are free," he said finally, as if pronouncing a sentence that he himself did not expect to pronounce. "Go before the cruel one and his people make a real mess." Luna could hardly believe her ears. She left the room, feeling a weight lifting from her shoulders, and at the same time some inexpressible regret that the relationship, which began so strangely and unexpectedly, ended so quickly. Once free, she took a deep breath and looked back at the building, where Storm was still standing in the doorway, watching her leave. Sparks intersected in their gazes, from which the mutual understanding that arose between them could light up or go out again. But time, still an enemy and a helper, did not stop for their history, continuing to move inexorably forward. The moon walked towards her new freedom, looking back only once, knowing that together with Storm, she had left both a scrap of her dress and a piece of her heart in these dark walls. The moon's path promised to be long and full of trials, but in that meeting, that look, that farewell silence, she found not only freedom, but also understanding. Sometimes a person designated by fate as your enemy can show you priceless mercy and change your path forever. And the moon, leaving the shadow of the thunderstorm, desperately wished that some dawn would bring her not only a new day, but also a new meeting, which this time would not be under the sign of a threat, but understanding or, perhaps, something else more unexpected.